This is Joey Landreth, and you're watching Guitar Magic.
Hey folks, if you want to see a killer interview with Joey Landreth, you're in the right place. You're watching Guitar Magic, a travel show about the guitar and its people, and in this episode, me and my buddy Howard wandered our way out to the Fretboard Summit in Chicago where I hooked up with Joey to chat. We got into some deep topics. Please stick around to the end so you don't miss a ridiculous version of Made Up Mind. I'm glad you're here. Don't forget to subscribe. Here you go. Hey Joey.
Hey John, how's it going? Welcome to my green room.
Yeah, it's really
nice. Would you
nice.
like a Pellegrino or a granola bar or a Chippewa spring water?
I get one for you. Well, thank you for coming on this here humble show. I am a huge admirer, and I will slow down with the flattery, but I just want to say it's really I'm really happy to be here with you. I'm really excited, so thanks in advance for your time. For anyone who's out there, we're in Chicago in the green room at the Fretboard Summit. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. If you don't want to answer them, say I don't want to answer them.
Okay, sounds good. Nobody's asked me a question that I wasn't comfortable answering yet, so there's your challenge.
Okay. How did the doctor remove that? No.
Well, you started by going, no.
Yeah. Guitar Magic is a show about the magic of the guitar. There's something going on with the guitar, and lots of people find it and feel it differently. So I'm going to try and dig into that. When was the first time you remember feeling the magic of the guitar?
I think it was very early on. My first memory would probably be, so the way that I came to the guitar was I started my sort of musical trip on the piano, as a lot of people do. And I'm sure you guys do it here, but in Canada we have this thing called the Royal Conservatory, and it's like sort of a regulated sort of music school structure, classically sort of focused. And I was taking Royal Conservatory piano, and I was not enjoying sort of the rigidity of it. And I eventually sort of said to my mom, like, I don't think I want to continue. Like, I want to continue music, I just don't want to do it like this. And so my parents they divorced when we were really young. I was like 5. And so, we were seeing my dad a couple times a week. We my mom had custody, but we were visiting our dad a couple times a week. And my dad said, well, what about guitar lessons? And so, I mean, initially it just kind of was like an opportunity for me to hang with my dad an extra day a week. But the very first lesson, he taught me how to play a shuffle in E. Boom, ba-ding, ga-ding, ga-ding, ga-ding. Like, just basically like a power chord. 5, 6, 5, 6. And I had done like, at that point I think I was 7 or 8, and I had been doing sort of formal piano lessons for 2 or 3 years. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I'll have to check with my mom. And I had just been like aching for this moment where I got to make music. And everything in my piano lessons up until I quit was all technique and theory and, I mean, very beginner, learning to read and stuff like that. And I was so anxious to just get to play music. And after my first lesson with my dad, I was playing music. And that was probably the biggest sort of magic moment. Was like, I walked into that lesson having no guitar experience, and I left being able to make music. And that was like all I wanted to do as a kid. And so that's probably my first like magic memory.
It's really sweet.
Yeah, it's pretty cute, right?
You're well known for being a guitar player, musician, guitar monster. But I'm kind of curious, like, what purpose does the guitar serve in your life? Like, maybe even on like a really deep level, what does it mean to you?
Well, I mean, music for me has always been about self-expression. And I think from a very young age, like past what I can remember, I always was fascinated. Like, my parents tell me stories of, like, there's a story about the first time I picked up a harmonica and I was like a year or 2 old, something like that. Of course, I have no memory of this, but, blowing into it, and a major chord came out, and my mom actually has a photo of this moment. And so from the kind of that moment on, I was always really, really driven to music. And so yeah, it's always been a sort of form of expression, and I think a lot of people sort of identify music with like it being kind of a bit of a safe place and a place that you can sort of explore yourself. And so the guitar for me is just, it's probably the mode by which I feel most fluent to express myself. So, I mean, I think a lot of people who are familiar with me know that I go deep into anything I do, whether it's, you know, like learning a chord melody passage or a chord inversion or wiring up my own pedal boards. Like I go all the way, because I'm just driven that way. But at the end of the day, like anything that I do in the music space, whether it's, you know, gear nerdery or anything music related, it's all sort of forming pathways that go back to exploring myself as a human and as a spiritual person and as a, you know, as an organism in this crazy race. You know, it's all just sort of, for me, it's all just about making sense of that and reconciling, you know, this crazy trip we're all on. And I think that's like, whether you know that's why you're making music or not, it is kind of what we all, like, it's all sort of done to reconcile whatever. I don't know, maybe I'm being too vague, but yeah, so that's what the guitar is for me. And it's the place that I feel the most fluent to express myself and sort of show people who I am and show myself who I am and explore different sort of factions of myself.
Thank you. Very eloquent. I've tried to answer that question. I don't get very far. It's a hard one to answer.
It's a hard one to answer. I mean, thankfully, I don't have any other jobs, so I can just sit around and think of this shit.
You know, I was raised as an only child. I spent a lot of time alone. I know you make a lot of music with a brother. And I'm just curious, you know, sometimes siblings have their own secret languages. I was wondering, do you and your brother have your own secret musical language? Can you read each other's minds?
I mean, we're very, very close. Musically speaking, we didn't really intersect all that much until we were a little bit older. Like we started playing music together when we were, I mean, still fairly young, but we weren't jamming in the womb kind of thing. Maybe that's not great phrasing. But anyways, moving right ahead. Maybe we'll edit that out or leave it in and we'll
that's
whatever.
The short right there.
Yeah. But we sort of started playing music together in my dad's band when I think I would have been in the 8th grade. So how old are you then? 13 and 15. So it was like we were young, but we weren't necessarily like always playing music together. It was something that sort of came together, and then we sort of went our separate ways. Once Dave graduated high school, and then eventually I also graduated high school, and we didn't come back together and start really making music together until the Brothers Landreth, and that was like a very concerted effort. And it was like I called him one day. I was getting off the road after a particularly rough run with one of the bands that I was working for, and was like, man, I need to make some music for myself, and I was just feeling super burnt out playing other people's music, and it's like playing other people's music and then kind of not getting treated super well, and then, you know, just some of the challenges that come with being a side person. So I said, what, like at the very least, let's just start a band together so we can hang out and be in charge. And I don't care if the music ever sees the light of day, but it would just be nice to have some control over this sort of environment. And, you know, the first song we wrote we both kind of walked away from it and went like, oh man, is that a good song? I think that might be a good song. And the rest was kind of history. Within like, sort of from that moment on, it was like the countdown timer to when we both quit our sort of day job gigs had begun, and I think it was about a year from like the first conversation to when we both put in our notice, and we're diving in feet first. So in terms of like, do we have this sort of telepathic? No, but we do communicate really, really well, and it's not always pleasant, but we are good communicators, and I would say that there are very few people that know my playing better than Dave, and I would say the same of him. There are very few people out there that know his playing better than I do. There are one or two, respectively. You know, I've had a few folks come through my solo stuff, and yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to play with some very incredible musicians who have gotten pretty cozy with the thing that I do. But I would say that they're, aside from those folks, yeah, Dave is definitely the number one person who knows me. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about some of the musical families, you know, the Carters, Van Halen, the guys from Pantera. It's sort of like there's
Sure.
this comfort thing going on between siblings or cousins or whatever it is. It's almost like you would never try really hard to impress them, but they know you.
For sure. Well, I mean, that is true. There's a level of ease that comes with that, you know, and like, I don't expect my brother to ever be impressed by me, and I love it. You know, like one of the things that I am probably the least comfortable with is getting compliments. You know, and it's not because I don't want somebody to say something nice, but it's like it kind of like, especially when you're working together on something, it kind of gets in the way of progress. And like I've had to ask, you know, when we're working on stuff in the studio, it's like the only feedback I want is this needs work, you know, because I've worked really hard at my craft, and I know that the sound that I make, I like the sound that I make. I'm confident in the sound that I make. But when we're working on stuff, just give me the hard news so that we can keep moving forward. Because I don't know. What am I trying to talk about? But it's cool though. Like, because we're family, we've made so much music together. We can just focus on tightening the bolts, and that's something that we're always kind of, as the Brothers Landreth, we're always kind of working towards. Is like, how can we sing our harmonies a little better? How can we groove a little harder? How can we make our records sound more interesting? We're always just working towards stuff together. Yeah. So that's very special.
I've been thinking a lot about the concept of trust. It seems to be a big thing in my mind lately, in my soul lately. I wonder about it. What are some of the ways that you think trust intersects with music?
What a very, very captivating question.
If you want to take a long pause, we can just wait.
Yeah. I mean, I think trust is just as a human concept, something that we should focus on more. I mean, I spent a lot of time in therapy. I'm not at all ashamed to admit that, and I've done a lot of soul searching on that particular topic. And I think like trust is kind of the doorway to so much. And I think like there's a lot of cases where you can kind of like reverse engineer dysfunction and find your way back to a lack of trust or not feeling comfortable to be vulnerable. And like that is, contrary to hopefully not so popular belief now, but like vulnerability is to me the key to anything being successful, whether it's art or business or a relationship or whatever. You have to be able to be vulnerable. In order to be vulnerable, you have to trust the people that you're with. So, I mean, it's a cool question because it's something that's on my mind all the time too. And I think it's in the times when things in my career have felt strenuous, it's when trust is bent or fractured, or at least most of the time in my relationships, I'm fortunate enough to say that anytime where I feel like the trust is wavering, it's got to do with maybe a lack of communication. And then you find like, oh, I actually am safe here, but we just weren't communicating directly enough or whatever. But to me, because like I like as a guitar player, I like I said earlier, I really like to go deep, and I like to practice, and I like to learn things. I like to transcribe. I have less time for it now that my family is growing, but what I'm really, really interested in, more than being good at the guitar or being a good singer or a good songwriter, is just expressing myself clearly. And I think that practicing and building your skills and your craft can help you to express, but I don't think that being objectively good at something is uniquely the vehicle to self-expression. I can think of a pretty long list of artists whose work has changed the world, that you could objectively say that they're bad at singing or bad at playing an instrument, or they're not, or they only do one thing, but the thing that they do is very special. But if you were like, hey, read this chart or play this song, they couldn't, but nobody would argue that their art is valid. You know what I mean? So all that to say, I think trust and feeling safe to explore your creativity and explore ideas, and not feeling like if I try something that my bandmates aren't going to go with me, and vice versa. I think it's incredibly important. I don't know if I answered the question. I kind of lost track of the question, if I'm honest.
You sound good.
Yes. I've been practicing my interview answers. So.
You mentioned your family just briefly. You're a father now, right? That's like kind of a huge life milestone.
Oh man,
right?
yeah.
I mean, things are a little different now. I'm kind of wondering, like, you're a dad. Have your thoughts about music or your career changed, or your goals? Like what happened when you had a kid, or what?
I mean, like my daughter, a black hole just sort of appeared in the center of my universe and sucked everything into it in the most amazing way. Yeah, I mean, becoming a dad, God, it changed everything. It's so funny because, like, I think before I had a kid, the idea of having children is like, yeah, I'm sure that's really nice. And I can see that people who do it really like it. And they seem, you have no gauge, though, for how, like, the cosmic ways that your life changes. And there's no way to explain that either, which is like, when I remember hearing people say stuff like that and just feeling like that's the most pretentious shit ever. But it is. It just changes everything. And I think, like, the pandemic was was like kind of the first big catalyst for change, because for the first time in my career, it kind of like forced me to redefine myself. We were looking down the barrel at like an indeterminate amount of time off the road. And it was the first time, because like, one of the things that we've kind of realized is like music is kind of like, it's recession proof. It's like, even in the recession within our time, people were still making room in their budgets to go see live music. So it was like, even if people are losing their houses and they're losing, they still need art. So we're okay. And the pandemic was like, oh, it's not pandemic proof though. And so I was kind of looking at this redefinition of, it was the first time in my career that I realized, like, I'm actually not solely a musician, not only a guitar player. I'm also like a friend, and I'm a neighbor. I'm a person who drives a van. Like, I'm a million different things. And it was the first time that I had the time to stop and think about it. And then when my daughter was born, that was kind of another reiteration of a lot of those feelings. But the way that that's changed my world is it's taken a lot of pressure off of music, because it's now not the only thing that's important to me. Like, obviously my wife and my family were important to me before, but in like kind of a peripheral way, where you're like, yeah, music, my job, my family, they can all share space. Nothing can share space with my daughter. And that's not even a choice. That's just how it is.
Right.
you know, and for the first time in my career, I'm finding myself saying no to things because I'm like, oh, I would love to go on tour with this person, or I would love to play on this record, but it's going to mean that I can't pick up Joni from daycare, and I'm not doing that. It's just not happening. My day ends at 5 o'clock. Actually, my day ends at 4 o'clock. And like, people are always like, well, you want to come do this thing? I would love to. I'm not gonna, you know? And it's just this, I never ever thought I would be that person. But the beautiful thing that comes with it is I realize that now that music doesn't, I realized, like, again, through the pandemic, that like music is actually not my identity. It's just a thing that I do that I love to do. It's a thing that helps me make sense of myself as a person. But I could do that in other ways. Music is just my medium because it's the language that I'm most fluent in terms of like self-expression. But yeah, when my daughter was born, it just became immediately clear that there's so many other avenues to explore, and then music gets to be just music, and so the pressure's off, and so I'm way more willing to take risks and have fun, and I don't take myself anywhere near as seriously as I did, you know, 2.5 years ago. And it's beautiful. Like I think the thing I've been saying is like my hands are probably in worse shape than they've ever been in my life, but my music is way, like, I like my own music better. I like the way that I play guitar better, even though I'm kind of like objectively worse at it. And like I listen back to like somebody posted a video of them transcribing one of my guitar solos, and I watched and I was like, I played that. Couldn't play that now, you know. But I'm okay with it because I'm not, you know. I feel like there's a little more honesty in the way that I play, and I think it just comes directly from kind of having the pressure sort of relieved a little bit. Yeah, because music doesn't have to like define me the way it did when I was a little bit younger.
I'm really glad you mentioned that. I was actually going to ask you specifically about that, and now I don't have to because you said it so eloquently.
Well,
maybe I'll ask you again later just for fun. Maybe it's like a rehearsal.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Do you think you will encourage your daughter into music ever?
If she wants to go into music, I will support it 100%. But I'm not going to push her to music. Not because I don't think it's a great way to spend your time, great thing to do. I just want her to decide. She's insanely musical, and I think that there's a very good chance that she'll do music somehow, like whether it's full time or not, I'm not sure. But I'm not as like. I don't know. It's interesting because I find people don't like this answer because they want to know that I'm like, go get your ukulele and practice your scales.
Right.
It's like, no, man. Like if she wants to play, then that's very exciting to me. But if she wants to dance, like the reality is I'm going to be into whatever. She wants to play hockey. Hell yeah. I don't care about hockey. Being a Canadian. Also an answer that some people don't want to hear, but you know what I mean? Like I'm just very, very interested in letting her show me who she is. That said, if she wants to play guitar, man, she's gonna have a badass guitar collection.
Yeah.
And there's a romantic side of me that's like, I would love to pass on. Like I've got sort of a small handful of guitars that are like my near and dear, most precious. And I think it would be very cool to pass them on to her, or if we end up having another. But it's not that important to me that she does it just because I do it. If she does want to do it though, that'd be pretty cool.
My dad's a pretty accomplished musician, and I remember, you know, he didn't push me towards music. And I remember having a heart-to-heart conversation at about 30-something years old. I said, Dad, why didn't you push me towards music? And he said, I was afraid you would love it.
Yeah.
And there's no turning back.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I think that is that's not as real a worry for me because, I mean, the reality is my daughter, if she goes into music, like her dad is an accomplished musician who has his own studio. Myself and my brother and our manager, Stu, who she calls Uncle Stu, we run a little record label. So she has all the resources. She'll be okay, you know. Yeah. And a lot of people who can help her which is FOMO. Who can help her manage and find the resources in order to make a living at it. And the reality is, like, you absolutely can make a living in music, but it's not the traditional living, you know. And like, I spent the majority of my life living off of like between 10 and 15,000 bucks a year, you know. So when I started making a little bit more money than that, I was like, I'm rich, you know. And so I think your ability to kind of make do with what you have is stretched being in the arts, but I'm not as worried as, you know, as like maybe some of my family was when I said I wanted to go into music. I remember a lot, like aunts and uncles just being like, how will you supplement your income? And, you know, it's like, don't try to fit me in that box, man. I don't feel the same way that those folks did. For good reason, but all that to say, I'm yammering again. Just like pull the string and I just.
This is kind of a deep question. It's been on my mind a lot also. I'm curious, when you're playing your best music, are you really present and in the moment, or are you just letting something channel through you? Do you ever have that feeling like you're not there?
No, you know what? I think for me, what I've found in the last few years is that my best playing and the times when I feel like the crowd connects the best, and my bandmates, is when we're all super present. And that doesn't mean like I'm sitting there going like, here comes a 2 chord, I'm going to play a Dorian scale. It's not that. It's like I'm actively paying attention and waiting for ideas to come and acting on them, and I'm not thinking about, you know, how long the drive is the next day or what we're going to have for, you know, a snack after the gig. I'm just there, present. Most importantly, though, I think what's really, really integral for me is to sort of push ego away, and that's like, oh, I gotta play this cool thing right now because I really want to get the reaction from the crowd. And I find like when I'm trying to play from that place is usually when the audience is kind of like, you know. And when I let go of all of that try hard shit and I just play for the sake of loving to play, that's when the audience really engages, and it's kind of undeniable. Like, so I've really, really tried in the last little while to push myself to play from that place. So yeah, ideally as present as can be, but sometimes it's tough, you know. Sometimes you're underslept or underfed or whatever. Somebody's phone goes off in the crowd and it just rips you from whatever, the astral fields, man. I don't know.
That would never happen.
That never ever.
Twice.
Yeah, exactly.
In 1 minute. You mentioned a little bit about your identity and, you know, how you feel like you can separate yourself from music. And I was wondering about that. I want to make sure I phrase this right. I've listened to a lot of your music and actually a lot of your interviews, and I can tell your brain is moving fast. I mean, it's noticeable. There's something going on. And I'm wondering, some people, when their brain is moving really, really fast, if they don't give it something to do, it works against them.
Sure.
And I'm wondering, do you ever think of music as like an elegant problem-solving exercise or an actual like coping mechanism or survival skill to keep your head together?
I've never really thought about it that way, but probably. Like I've never really thought of myself as a fast moving or fast thinking person, but I also don't listen to a lot of my music or any of my interviews. So maybe if I did, I would be like, oh geez, what's going on there? I don't necessarily like to think of music as a coping mechanism, because I do treat my own mental health in a very similar way that I treat my craft. Not that I'm trying to master my mental health, but I'm just curious about it all the time. And so I don't like the idea of using music as a crutch, because I think it can be dangerous in the sense that you depend on it, and if it goes away, or you don't connect with it, then all of a sudden you're in crisis. And I mean, I'm a recovered alcoholic, or recovering alcoholic. I definitely have a tendency to go all the way on things, whether that's practicing guitar or drinking hard liquor. I'm pretty good at all of it. But because like through my own sort of self-explorations, realizing that my abuse of substances kind of is a symptom of a bigger problem. And so I do shy away from that sort of old trope of like, you know, if I don't play music, I'll die. It's like, actually, you won't. But maybe you need something stimulating, you know what I mean? I just think it's dangerous. So I don't like to think that. And I mean, I'm not trying to pass judgment on people who do feel that way, but just from my own sort of experience and in my life, I don't like to think of it that way. But I definitely treat music as a bit of a problem solving. Like it's just a curiosity for me, and like whether it's like trying to find an interesting way to get from one key to another, or trying to find a cool sound that helps lift the energy of a section in a song, or, you know, dreaming up some crazy sound on my pedal board, like all of that stuff. I love the idea of it being troubleshooting or problem solving, and we recently did a road trip, sort of in between festivals. We brought the families along and we drove around Alberta, and my wife, who is absolutely brilliant, Anna, she goes to like the dollar store and buys a bunch of toys. And so if we're on a long drive, you know, every couple hours, she'll give the kids a surprise. And one of the items and my sister-in-law does this too, one of the items was a Rubik's Cube, like a 2x2 Rubik's Cube. And I picked it up, and immediately I'm like Googling algorithms and methods. And I was just like, here I go again. And if I'm not careful, I'm going to get addicted to Rubik's Cubes. But that kind of stuff I find really stimulating, and my brain absolutely like, I do not think of myself as somebody who's like particularly intelligent. But I do like that stuff. I do like that kind of problem solving stuff. I just find it fascinating, you know?
Well, I admire your humble slant on that, but I still think you're a fast thinker, and I'm glad to hear that you are keeping your mind busy solving problems, sometimes in a healthy way.
Yeah. Whiskey does a good job of it too, but but there are other side effects that come with that.
Yeah, side effects include destroying your life.
Yeah.
I'm just curious. Bonnie Raitt recorded one of your tunes. Okay, first of all, I mean, that's awesome, but how did that feel when you heard that?
Stupid. It was so bonkers. Yeah. So the story of that is really, really fun, and it goes back, like, it's got some history to it. We met Bonnie back in 2014 at the Winnipeg Folk Festival. We opened up for her. We didn't actually even open up for her. We were just the first band on, and she was the headliner. And so some friends had said to her, some mutual friends said, hey, these guys are playing first. You should go see them. And she did. The end of the night, she gave me her email address. I'm telling this the fast version. She said, looking for songs, like, let me, you know, I like your guys' sound. If you have anything that you think fits, send it to me. And all we had were the songs on our record. We literally had no extra songs. And so I just sent her the record and said as much. If there's anything on here that you like, you know, have at it. And then when did her version of Made Up Mine come out? This year? Earlier this year? Or last year? I think it was this year. It would have been this year. So my buddy Zach from Mythos Pedals called me August, maybe July of last year, and said, Kenny Greenberg called me and said that he needed that Bonnie Raitt told him to buy your signature fuzz pedal because they're playing a bros tune. Like, what do you know about this? And I was like, nothing. I don't know anything about this. Like, I literally heard it from him. And I guess they were rehearsing in Nashville, or they made the record. I don't know. And so we didn't know like which song. We didn't know if they were like just sound checking with it. We had no idea. And then I got an email in December of, I guess, 22 from her management saying, "Hey, congrats! Like we cut Made Up Mind, and it's going to be the first single." And yeah, I mean, Dave and I that was never an item on the bucket list. You know, have a hero record one of your songs. Never. So there's just no way to prepare yourself for that feeling. And we've never really thought of ourselves as like career songwriters. You know, I think Dave would agree that we sort of feel like instrumentalists first. That's kind of how I made my career, and he as well. And songwriting was something that was like, well, if we're going to be a band, we need songs, and so we'll write some songs. But songwriting has never been like a big vocation for me as much as it is like a problem-solving thing. Not to say that I don't love writing. Like, I actually kind of don't love writing, but I really like having my own songs. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. It was not on our radar that something like that could ever happen. So it's still like, every time I hear her play it, I'm just like, this is crazy. This is bonkers. Or she would talk about us in interviews and like talk about Winnipeg and talk about like the folk festival, and just really cool. Very, very proud. We're very proud of it and very touched by it. And she's just so insanely classy because she doesn't have to talk about us, you know, but she does, which is just so cool. And she kind of sets a very high bar for generosity in the music industry. I think I'm sure she in her career, she had a lot of people like help validate her. I know like Muddy Waters was a very early supporter of her, and I'm sure that made her feel 100 feet tall at a time when people were probably underestimating her. And it's exactly what her sort of validating us through recording one of our tunes is just, you know, yeah, it's just the coolest shit ever.
I mean, it's not like you need the blessing of your heroes and all of that, but
it goes a long way.
You guys are making great music before that happened, you know? You have been making solo music. Your band, you know, there's a lot going on in your musical life, but it does feel nice when you, yeah.
Oh, yeah, heck yeah, yeah.
Okay, check. I just wanted to make sure that felt good.
Yeah. I'm indifferent about it, whatever.
Yeah. I was actually kind of wondering, you know, we only get to be, well, some of us, maybe the window's passed, you only get to be young and good looking for so long, you know, you're not always marketable. One day you're, 65, 78, whatever, it happens to everyone sooner or later. And you're kind of like a sweetheart of the guitar world right now, you know, and it's well earned. I'm not trying to take anything away, but I'm wondering, do you ever have this sort of like low level buzzing fear, like this, what if this ends?
No, not really, but it's kind of because like we're already so much more successful, and we're still driving ourselves in our own van. Like, we're not on a bus or anything, you know, and it's like it's just Dave and I, our drummer Roman, and our sound guy Ian in the van, you know, like we're not, but we're so much more successful than I ever thought we were going to be. So I don't know. It's not that I don't think that it'll ever go away, because it certainly could. But I feel like I'm just like, from the moment that we sort of surpassed any of the things I ever thought we would do, I've just been kind of like riding off into this infinite sunset. And the credits just keep rolling, and the cowboy's just like, when's this shit gonna be finished? So that's kind of how I feel about it. Like, I mean, obviously, maybe now I will start staying up at night going like, oh my God, what if people stop liking my music? But I think also part of that is we do have some unbelievably supportive fans, you know, and like, we're not like I think our biggest market is Winnipeg, and then London, England, and in both places, Winnipeg we can pull about 1,000 tickets. London we do about 800 to 1,000 tickets, and everywhere else is like 200-300. It's like I don't what am I trying to say? People are just so supportive, and they're really, really generous, and they kind of keep us going. So I don't know, maybe I'm just overly confident but I mean, at some point, I guess everybody dies. I don't know. The interview's taking a bit of a turn here.
Sorry, man. Didn't mean to turn it dark on you.
No. I guess the answer is not currently. Not currently, but probably will now.
Sorry, man.
That's okay. Damn you, John.
You could write a tune about that. This is just a bit of a technical thing about playing slide because I was mentioning earlier I had a vocal cord issue and I couldn't sing. Not that I ever could, but now I actually just can't really sing.
Right.
And I thought I could maybe cop like some vocal sound on a guitar. It felt like something I needed to do as a human. It's really hard to get your intonation straight. And I was wondering, the little techie thing, guitar nerds out there, this one's really for you right now. What part of your hand feels like the reference point when you're trying to get the slide to where it needs to be? Is it like your pinky? Is it your pointer finger? Do you just use your ears and aim and hope for the best? Do you think about that, or does it just happen for you?
Well, I don't think about it a whole lot, but I have spent a lot of time working on it. If I had to pinpoint like a physical center, I would probably say like my first knuckle is sort of like that's the place that I'm trying to get that over the sweet spot. The reality is though that within the sort of intervals in a major scale or, pentatonic, whatever you're playing, there are variations on the intonation. Like for example, a major third, if you play it exactly over top of the fret, exactly where the string is in tune, if you match it to the fretted note, it's actually sharp from where the major third happens in the overtone series. So it's not that it sounds bad there, it's just that there's some wiggle room, and like when you're right over top of the fret, that third sounds very present and immediate and has a lot of forward motion. But if you pull it back the tiniest amount, and I couldn't tell you the measurement, it's just you kind of hear it when it lands. It's way sweeter and it's soft, and like almost every interval in the scale has a little bit of wiggle room, and so it's less about nailing the pitch and it's more about just reacting to how you're playing. Obviously, when you first start playing slide, everything just feels like you're out to sea.
Yeah. Swimming in waders that are full of water or something.
100%. Yeah, it's like the second worst sounding thing to practice other than violin, I think. And that's probably the thing that keeps people from playing slide, is that it's really hard to get started. I often tell people, like, drone your low E string and then play a major scale on your high E string with the slide and just get used to that sort of ba-da-da-da-da-da-da kind of stuff and mess around with little melodies and see what it sounds like to float back and forth between two intervals and try to see if you can sort of generate a physical feeling with playing in tune. Because if you're just trying to, like, I've heard a lot of people say, I just leave my tuner on like the no mute and I just watch my tuner. It's like, well, if you're sitting there watching your tuner, then you're not really probably making music. Right. So it's an interesting thing. Like when I first started going into therapy, one of the exercises that we did, I was struggling with anxiety, and one of the tools that my doctor gave me is, she said, like, it's important to be able to identify what your anxiety feels like, where it manifests in your body, and for everybody it's a little bit different. So to be able to feel to be able to isolate what it feels like to be anxious, and then at least you can acknowledge when it's beginning, and then you can start to employ other tools. Because a lot of times we don't even notice when this anxiety is coming in. I kind of feel it's a very similar thing with intonation. You kind of just have to be very present and respond to the way that it feels to play in tune. Maybe that's a bit of a long stretch, but it kind of, like, when I think hard about it, it is more of a feeling than it is necessarily like a technicality, which is why I think a lot of people struggle with it, because they want it to be technical. They want it to be like, if you put your hand like this and you do this, then it's going to be perfect, and it's just not like that. And that's one of the things that I think discourages people from playing slide, is it can be something that requires a lot of vulnerability and feedback. You have to be ready for it to sound bad. And like, I'm known as a slide guitar player, and I still sometimes completely shit the bed. You go for something just like, well, there's no fixing that. You have to be very, very okay with the idea that you will fall. directly on your face.
Yeah.
And it sounds bad. And that's okay.
And that's the pathway to getting to the thing that sounds good.
Sure, but it's also can be a beautiful moment. Like, I mean, I'm not afraid of making mistakes on stage because I think it's a really great way to connect with the audience. And I kind of get bored at shows when everything is perfectly executed. It's like, okay, well, you're just playing for me something that you've spent so much time preparing. I want to hear the stuff you're not prepared for, because that to me is where you're like, oh, that's who that person is, you know. And so like if I make a mistake, I'm the first person to go, ooh, you know. It's fun. People like it. And they also like to know that you're fallible. And also, we just love to watch things crash and burn. So it's like human nature in one split second when you play a bad note on slide guitar. It's like all of our deep, dark desires are just like, yeah, fail. I don't know. Again, you're spinning out of control here.
It's all right. We're in a small room, confined space. You can spend as much as you want. You're going to hit much. So I came to you as, you know, because I was a guitar nerd and, you know, you're a guitar nerd. But I then come to realize that your singing is like, it's really, I don't want to be like over flattering, but it's pretty remarkable. Like your pitch, and when you sing harmonies, like you were talking about, it feels like something. It feels like something more than a really tight interval. It feels like, do you feel that when you're singing as well? Do you like kind of lock into this?
Oh yeah.
What is it? Like a thickness of this? What is it?
It's kind of the same thing. I mean, I thank you for saying all those nice things. I work on my singing the same way that I work on my guitar playing. I haven't put as much time into the singing that I have onto guitar, but I'm just always chasing after the same thing. If I'm like, I mean, I'm not a great keyboard player, but I played all the keys on our last record, and it was a bit of like, I love playing keys. During the pandemic, I picked up an old Hammond organ, so I got really into playing Hammond. And yeah, I mean, I just chase all of those things with the same curiosity, and it's all about like, you know, finding the sounds that I really love. And so whether it's playing slide guitar or arranging background harmonies or trying to teach myself how to play Hammond organ, I'm always just kind of chasing after the same thing. And the thing that I'm chasing after is that feeling. It's like the same feeling that you get when you tell a story before a song and it lands and people connect with it. It's the same feeling that when like you're singing harmonies and you get your intonation right and everything just kind of like goes, you know, it's like that to me is like, that's the ultimate feeling is when all those things like just kind of line up. And I think you can measure them, like, you know, and a lot of people have like that sort of like major third being a little flat versus being like kind of perfectly in tune. That is a measurable difference, but it also comes with a feeling. So you can chase it from either angle, but either way, when you land there, you're like, ooh, that feels great. You know, it's like a warm bath. I don't know. I'm going to avoid saying things like that because it gets creepy. But so in terms of the singing stuff, it's very much the same thing, and you know, it comes with risk too, because I think like if you play bad guitar, you can blame it on something outside. My guitar was out of tune, my amp was acting up, my pedals this, my cable that. But when you sing, it's like the ultimate, this is who I am.
You are the instrument.
Yeah. And like if somebody says, I don't like this guy's guitar playing, I'm like, whatever. When somebody says, I don't like your singing, it always hurts, you know? I had a guy come up to me at a show recently and he said, your singing is really getting better. And I was like, I know that you mean that with love, but it's still, what I'm hearing is, before it was not that good. And I still, thank you so much for saying so. And then I walked away just like, oh, you know. But yeah, it's an extra vulnerable thing. Again, I'm not answering the question anymore, but.
I have this 1987 Volkswagen van, and it doesn't have air conditioning, and it only goes about 58 miles an hour, but it has this killer stereo system.
Sick.
And like I said, I really can't sing, but I turned the stereo up as loud as I could, and I sang along with this, I forget what it was. I was singing along with something, I was hearing something coming out of the radio, but it felt like I was singing it, and I couldn't hear my bad singing over it.
Right.
And I just, it was like this like visceral, embodied feeling of like, this is what it must feel like to be able to sing.
It's a pretty good feeling. It's a pretty good feeling. I'm glad that you had that.
Yeah, well, I have to drive an old car to get it, so.
Hey, you probably look cool as hell doing it.
I do, yeah. Wind gets in my hair. I got a couple easy questions, and I'm going to ask you some like what's next questions. But these are just, I call them just because questions. Have you ever had an audience member sit in a chair that collapsed? Howard?
Here's looking at you, Howie. Yes, I have. Yes, I have. He died on the spot, actually. It was very tragic. Yeah, died in a lawn chair accident. No, yeah, Howard fell out. His chair broke out. And we were all very concerned for him, but he was fine. Only his ego was bruised.
I do not do a gear show. There's other people that can talk about gear much better than I can, but I do want to ask you one nerdy thing. If you could have 3 pedals, and that's it, today, what would they be?
Right now, it would be the Kingsley Amplification Juggler, which is a killer tube overdrive preamp thing that I am absolutely in love with. A vintage Vox wah, like a late 60s vintage Vox wah, the best. And then maybe just the new Boss DM, the new Boss analog delay pedal is really, really good.
Okay.
Yeah. I could get through life with those 3.
All right. Thank you. I'll leave it to you other gear shows out there to do a much better job of that one, but I was just curious. So
great.
Thank you.
I know, I love it.
I'm curious, do you use beard products? And if so, which ones?
I don't know the name of the stuff that I use, but I'll text you a picture of it.
Okay.
And I just use, whenever I come home from the barber, if my wife goes, oh, what's that? Then that's the one that I'm like, give me 3 more of those. Yeah.
Send more. You do speak pretty openly about, mental health, and I was wondering, I think you kind of alluded to this earlier. Do you do some like mental health hygiene or stuff to keep your head together?
I mean, yeah, I go to a therapist like fairly regularly. I haven't been in a while, but it's something that I very much make a priority. And I think it's like, we go to the dentist to get checked up. We go to our GP to get checked up. I go to therapy, and I think it's just like even if I'm not in crisis, I go to just sort of like either get my tools sharpened or learn some new ones or whatever. I think that's really, really important. I've read a fair amount of books. There's a guy named Gabor Mate that I really, really like, and he talks a lot about addiction and trauma, which are things that are very present in sort of my journey. And I don't know. I think like if you can't afford therapy, talking to a trusted friend, it's just like that should be number one. We should all have somebody we can talk to, and somebody who's just going to listen. And if you do have access to either the resources or insurance or funding or whatever, and you can go talk to a psychologist, even better. But if you can't, lean on your community. Really, really important that we keep talking to each other. In our band, everybody, myself, my brother, our drummer, and our sound guy Ian, we're all sort of on our own respective sort of paths with our mental health, and we're constantly sharing with each other. And it's like, it's just become really important to me to kind of like hear where these guys are at and share where I'm at and continue to bounce ideas off each other. So sharing, I mean, I think, a lot of people do a lot of meditation. I struggle with that. Maybe it's because my brain is just like, just
I can't solve this problem.
Chihuahua puppies running under a blanket at any given moment. But yeah, communication, sharing, community, important.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for speaking openly about that. I think it means a lot to a lot of people. And also, thanks for sharing that. I was really just curious. And,
cool.
And I'm glad I got to ask.
I like talking about it because I think that when I was struggling with my alcoholism and my self-hatred, if I'd have heard somebody that I admired talk about their trip, I probably would have ended up in a different place. Or I may have ended up where I'm at now a little earlier. And so it's a priority for me because I just wish more people were talking about it when I was younger, and I want more people to be talking about it now, and I don't want it to feel like it's a taboo thing. So anyway, thanks for giving me this platform.
Okay, we're getting into the home stretch here, and then we can go do whatever else people do at the Fretboard Trail.
Great.
I am curious, are there other areas of music that you really want to explore, or have you kind of found something that feels comfortable for you and you want to stay in that space?
That's a great question. I've kind of, the music that I listen to is very different than the music that I make. And I have come to terms with that. And it's not that I don't love the music that I make. I do. I love my own music. I'm very proud of it. But the reality is, like, I think I spend more time listening to like Bach chorale music. I really love that stuff. And it doesn't necessarily, like, my songs don't necessarily sound like Bach chorales. So I don't know if I'll necessarily venture super far out of the idiom in which I live, but I am always sort of chasing curiosity around. So I think if you listen to my first record and my most recent record, you probably would hear a difference. But you know, I'm not going from like AAA to death metal or anything like that anytime soon.
Okay. Yeah. If anyone's out there listening, I am going to leave links to every possible way to find everything that you individually or as a band have ever done.
Great.
I will make that
Thank
easy.
you.
If you're wondering, it'll be easy. Look down there somewhere. I'm curious, do you have a sense of urgency about anything in music, like musical FOMO, like people you want to play with before the window closes, or something you feel like you just need to do? Or are you just like really happy in your space right now? It's a kind of a variation of the question I just asked, and now that I ask it, it feels stupid. But
no, it's a good question. I'm super happy with where I'm at. I mean, there's like I'd love a chance to like talk to Raitt. I'm a huge fan of his, and his music has been so important to me. And I don't think I would ever want to share the stage with him. Just because it would just be like me like doing a bad impression of him while he's watching would just be weird. But I would love to meet him. That would be something that I would love to happen at some point in my life. But I don't know. I'm really pumped with where we're at. I'm excited to like make some more records and write some more songs. But yeah, I don't really again, like we set the bar pretty low for ourselves at the beginning of our career, and so I'm just, you know, I'm riding off into the old rolling credits sunset.
well, I've really just had such a good time talking with you. Thanks for making the space to do this.
It's a pleasure.
What should people out there, they should hit all the links below. Is there anything that's coming up, tours, albums, anything that you're super excited about right now? Anything you want people to know? We can...
For sure. There's a few things coming up. We are kicking off a Western U.S. tour in L.A. We're starting at Eric Clapton's Crossroads, Woodwood. And kaplunk name drop.
Little thing there.
Yeah, whatever. Also something that I'm completely terrified to do, but whatever. That's another conversation. Looking forward to it. We're starting our Western U.S. tour in L.A. and sort of traveling up the coast for a couple weeks. So head on over to our www.broslandreth.com/tour or /shows. I can never remember. And there's links there if you're out west and you want to come to a show. Please do. November and December will be in Europe. We're starting in Denmark and then working our way back to the UK. And then this year is the 10th anniversary of our first record, Let It Lie. So we've got a really fun project coming out like end of September, and then we'll be doing some touring around that. this year and also into next year. So keep your eyes peeled for that.
Awesome. Well, you heard it here, folks, or maybe you heard it somewhere else. Go do all that stuff. Do the things. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Anyways, I would like to play a cover of a Bonnie Raitt song, which I happened to write. It starts slow, with go ahead and go, and pretty soon a melody is like a rainstorm tin roof symphony. It starts slow, it goes on and on, for way too long. Always ends on a bad note. If you could dance it all, you dance along. It goes on and on. The quiet behind the slamming door, the break of a heart that won't break no more. Getaway wheels in a straight line, serenade of a made-up mind. Of a made-up mind. There ain't no rhyme, just wasting time. Moonlight, twilight, shining on, made up mind and a love gone wrong. There ain't no rhyme. The quiet behind a slamming door, the break of a heart that won't break no more. Getaway wheels in a straight line, serenade of a made-up mind. The quiet behind the slamming door, the break of a heart that won't break no more. Getaway wheels in a straight line, serenade of a made-up mind. Serenade of a made-up mind. Serenade of a made-up mind. Moonlight, spotlight shining down on.